Hi, everyone. You're watching The Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro, where we have conversations with a group of ascended masters known as the multitude of the greater good.
Kelly asked the questions and I channel the answers from the multitude, who are multitudes and multitudes of ascended masters and higher realms beings. And their primary goal is to help you become a better you. And I do my best to bring through the information that they have to offer.
Thanks, Ginny. Thanks for always being a clear channel. And
Happy to do it.
thanks to the multitude for being here today. So, my first topic and question today is around our ancestors. So, first, talking about our physical ancestors, right? Our moms, our dads, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We hear a lot about, there's the genetic side of things, what we carry forward genetically, biologically. There's the epigenetics you hear about, what our DNA carries in the way of trauma, emotional memory stored in the body. And then there's the mental aspect of beliefs, right? Whether it's religious beliefs or just general beliefs about, I don't know, any topic, right? Money, right? Whether you've got scarcity consciousness running through your family or religious topics or just anything. You could think of any single topic about what it means to be a boss, what it means to be an employee, what it means to be a woman or a man, on and on and on. So we have the physical, the emotional, the mental, and then spiritual. Spiritually, what we may bring forward ancestrally through our ancestral lineage. I think there's a lot of talk and belief around that. I would love for the multitude to share with us what is true about what we carry, what we bring in from our ancestry.
It is important to understand that if one were to bring in everything from every ancestor over their many lifetimes of being, it would be an impossibility. However, we can tell you in your current lifetime, one believes that there are those things that are it's like inherited or moved forward as a connection of one to the other. However, we can tell you 99% of the connection is learned behavior. If one chooses to follow another's learned behavior, or even if they don't choose, it is the way it is passed down from generation to generation. However, it has nothing really to do with who one is or what one wants. In our estimation, it is important to understand that there are those on the earth plane who believe that their ancestry is quite implicit in their lifetime. However, we can tell you each one is responsible for each one's own self, and whether or not it is connected to an ancestor is of unimportance. In our estimation, it is important that each one understand that ancestors are very much important on the earth plane, as they are generation after generation after generation of love and care 99% of the time. However, it is the learned experiences from each person that are more prevalent in one's lifetime than the it's like the connection, I want to say coils or chords or those kinds of things. In our estimation, there is an energetic connection to each one, as each one has set up their lifetimes before coming to the earth plane. And that is where the connection is made. And that is how the connection allows itself to experience itself on the earth plane. Do not be concerned.
Okay, so is it true then that like here I am Kelly and or my soul before I incarnate as Kelly chooses this particular family, right? This generational family because like I want to have it's likely that this couple, my parents, are going to produce twin girls, and that's a scenario I want to experience in this lifetime. And this type of body is more likely through the genetics. Like, I guess what I'm asking is like, it seems like the soul chooses a lot of the scenario that they're going to incarnate into. And I guess what I'm trying to understand, like, what aspects are considered most prevalently, like when choosing, I guess, a family dynamic, like, you know, does the soul look at the potential to learn certain behaviors under that family dynamic, the potential to experience a certain gender, based on the genetic makeup and likelihood. You see what I'm saying? Like how how specific does it get? And I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but it's like I don't know. I just see these souls looking down on potential parents and going, "Yeah, that one." Or maybe it's those parents because they're part of my soul group. You know what I mean? So,
It's more part of the soul group. It's not random. It is
okay.
important to understand, my dear, that many, many things are decided on the soul level before coming, generating oneself on the earth plane. We can tell you one decides what it is that one chooses to learn in this particular lifetime. Then one sets up the means by which one can learn it, whether it be through this connection or that connection. The connections are made on the soul level. And when one is ready to move forward in life, one allows oneself to continue through that how do I want to say that? I can just see generation after generation, like the first generation and each generation after it until you come. But the way I understand it is it works that way, but you've decided what you needed to learn and you've decided how. And you've made agreements with each of these generations, and each of these generations move forward in what they needed to learn. And that's more how it works rather than because one's born to a certain person, these things are passed down. It's more like they're decided before coming to the earth plane, and then they are generated. There is also the ability, my dear, to understand that many things change between the generation of the idea and the application of the idea. There are those things that can be completed and those things that will need to wait until another time for one to complete the experience. In our estimation, there's much more to ancestors than just that part that one can see on the earth plane. Much has been decided in the spiritual before coming to the earth plane, and that is where 99% of 99.9% of the connections are made. Do not be concerned.
Yeah, I think you hear a lot about like especially in like new age spirituality, you hear people say like I came here to break this family pattern, like it's some sort of soul mission. And and sometimes I think about that like in certain family dynamics, you can almost see how certain wounds start out very intensely and then through the generations, there might be like healing and further healing and further healing. Like, so in, whereas my grandfather was an abusive alcoholic, my mother didn't pick up the drink, but she was wounded from that and likely, you know, passed on certain traits. And then it comes to me, and I'm very much a people pleaser, codependent, and then I'm working to heal that. And so, what do you see what I'm saying about like these wounds fading out? Um, like, is some of that determined? Like, like that trajectory, is that considered when you're planning? Like, is some of that set up ahead of time, or is it based on whatever you accomplish in your lifetime, or I don't know.
99% of that is set up ahead of time. Not necessarily the how to, but the why and the determination to complete the process.
Got it.
Um, a lot of it's learned behavior from the ancestors before, like the parents and whatever. So they can't teach you what they don't know. They
Right.
learn what they know, and then they teach you what they know, and then you learn differently and you live your life differently. But what you may have come to do was not necessarily heal that specific thing, but to learn patience, to learn understanding for that person, to learn compassion for that person, to learn those kinds of things rather than actually heal the abuse that they've suffered. That's not the goal. They may have chosen to experience abuse in order to balance out something or to heal something that they have, which is up to them what they choose to do. And then it's up to us how we choose to work with that. And, you know, that learned behavior that we've learned from them, we choose to accept it or do things just the opposite. So what was your question? Because I'm sure I didn't answer it.
No, actually, you did. Yeah, and I think, oh, I just lost what I was going to say on that, but oh, okay. So again, when talking about energy work, a lot of people will say like, I came to heal my family lineage. And you get this sense of the burden is on that person. And it's now their responsibility that if they don't heal, the lineage doesn't heal, or they've come here in some way to heal the family lineage. And I'm curious about the truth of that. Is like, okay, what is true about that? Because if someone heals themselves, are they healing part of their lineage? Or are they just healing themselves? And then the future trajectory just looks different. And whatever souls are going to incarnate into that future trajectory are just seeing it for what it is and saying, yeah, that's a scenario I want to drop into. Um, yeah, I guess I'd like a understanding, a explanation of what is true or false about that.
Okay, but what do you mean that's an experience I want to drop into? What is that
Like
about?
a soul who, like, for example, let's say I did healing work, and my belief is I do it for myself, right? It
Mhm.
it likely does not affect my past ancestors. Um, that I can only heal me. That's my guess of what the multitude's going to say. But because I healed those aspects of myself, that my future, my child and their children maybe don't have access to those dysfunctional traits that I worked hard to heal. So when their souls drop into the incarnation of my great great grandchild, they might not experience the same dysfunction or ailments, whatever, that I worked to heal. So others say that's healing the family lineage, right? but is it really just healing us?
It is important to understand each one is responsible for each one's own self. When one heals oneself, the energy on the earth plane changes. The energetic connection on the spiritual plane changes. Therefore, the connection on the spiritual plane helps others in the energetic experience of being in spirit, as energy is all there is in spirit. When one allows oneself to heal oneself on the earth plane, the energy that is produced or progressed by that healing is spiritually commingled with all the other energy. Therefore, that healing energy is dispersed and helps others heal as well. That is where the healing takes place in the lineage, so to speak. As on the spiritual plane, there is no real lineage. There are only soul groups who choose to do what one chooses to do with the help of another. We can tell you as one heals oneself energetically, the healing is quite wonderful and quite shared on the spiritual plane as well as on the physical plane. However, one on the physical plane is not responsible for healing one's ancestors, so to speak.
That's a good answer.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes when you hear that, it feels like this, like I am special. I am here because I am special. I'm doing this special job.
Mm.
Um, and it is a burden, but this is the life I chose. And, you know, and it's like, I don't know what that's about. Um,
It is important to understand, my dear, that each one comes to the earth plane for one's own self, one's own learning, one's own experiencing, one's own healing of abnormalities and indiscretions of being. When one is able to be on the earth plane in full knowing of who one is, it does not matter what another thinks or says or does, as one is on the earth plane for oneself and oneself only. It is also important to understand that when one comes to the earth plane, they also come to help others. However, they can only do that from the space of knowing themselves first.
Love it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, that kind of brings us to chords. And so the idea of chords, okay, so on the earth plane, it looks like this person in my life is toxic, or I've had a breakup. I need to cut cords. And so there's a lot of talk about I'm going to, go into the etheric realm and cut the cord. So this person is out of my life, right? What is true about chords? And let's just start with that. What is true about chords and what is false about chords?
It is important to understand that when one comes to the earth plane, one comes at the request of another to help another, or one comes at the request of oneself to learn, to move forward and allow the growth that one needs in order to experience and expand oneself. In our estimation, when one on the earth plane talks about chords, they are talking about the connection made in the spiritual realm of helping another or being in connection with another. Therefore, it seems like they are tied to someone on the earth plane or tied to a negative experience on the earth plane with another. However, we can tell you it is none of the above. It is that one comes to the earth plane to help oneself, to experience, and to allow with the help of another. Therefore, if one on the spiritual plane agrees, for instance, like in my case, to a marriage with someone that there have been many experiences with in past lifetimes that are needing to be sorted out, so to speak, or healed, if one wants to look at it that way. Then one will go through that kind of experience. And when the object of the connection on the earth plane is complete, one is able to move oneself along without carrying the complete, what do I want to say? It's like, and for me, it's like end the relationship. I didn't want to end it. He did. Best gift he ever gave me. But the point is, we came together in order to clear up some things from other lifetimes. And when they were complete, then we were able to move on. It is not so much a cord. It is a matter of allowing oneself to allow one to understand the process has been completed. The process is no longer required, and each one is free to move forward. If one wishes to keep that connection and allow oneself to be bedraggled along the way, one has that choice also. And that is the object of cutting cords. If one in one mind self believes that there is a problem and can be solved by cutting the cord, it is a mental connection. However, the energetic connection 99% of the time has been resolved. And if there's more to be resolved, it will continue, regardless of what one believes about cords and cutting cords. When one is ready to move forward, one does. Do not be concerned.
Yeah, so it sounds like it can be a useful tool to witness and work with the energetic aspect of a relationship, right? So I feel like you can probably go into a bit of a meditation and say, show me the cord attached. And if that cord represents the energy between you two, the energetic connection, it can be strong. And your intentional cutting and releasing, well, it sounds like, okay, it sounds like you can do that, but if in spirit there's still more to experience, it's not gonna work.
So for me, the way I look at that, it's not a cutting at all. It's just the mind being able to sort it out in a different way.
Yeah,
If one believes they've cut the cord, okay, it's a mind thing. But
right.
energetically, when it's ready to be complete, it will be complete.
Yeah, and that's why you hear people who are like, I cut the cord, but I don't know, they're still in my life. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because
And some people will say, oh, I've cut the cords and I feel so much better that I've released all that. Well, it wasn't there in the first place, but in their mind, they released it.
yeah, so they set the intention to be done, and if they followed through with that intention and didn't pick up the phone or didn't engage and truly cut someone off, then yeah, I think it's an interplay, right?
Well, that's one way to look at it. You're looking at it from the um, the earth plane level, and I'm looking at it from the energetic level. So,
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do is connect the two or at least show how they interplay,
mhm.
right? That like it's a both and because if you're seeing a chord, it's just a representation of energy. And
Yeah,
so you can mentally imagine yourself cutting and releasing. That's sometimes not enough. You have, like, in other words, I think some people rely on that type of energetic intention to be the end all be all, but it's also the physical. It's also like, let's say you're in a toxic relationship and you're like, I want out. I'm going to go to someone, they're going to help me cut this cord, and you do all this like energy work around cutting the cord. And it might not be energy work, it might just be a mental intention, right? And
Uh-huh.
then that person calls you and you pick up the phone. Well, you're
Yeah,
still engaged and you're still in connection. So, was that energy work or was that a mental intention of cutting the cord? The connection is clearly still there if you're engaging, right?
right.
So, I guess what I'm trying to do is like take the whole picture into play and let's be real about what's actually like your role in it. Like that you have a physical role in it
True.
and
That's
you determine it. It's not just something that happens in the etheric realms that you're like, I cut the cord, so now I'm done. Well, follow through with it kind of thing, I
in the,
guess.
in the spiritual realm. When you're complete in the process, it will disconnect itself. If you want to look at as a cord, it will disconnect itself. You don't have to do anything to disconnect it, but you do have to do the work around yourself and your feelings and your growth processes.
Yeah.
Really doesn't, in my opinion, have anything to do with chords. When you're finished with whatever it is you've come to learn from that experience, the chord, if you choose to look at it that way, the energy will disconnect itself. It's no longer required.
Yeah. And maybe the energy is like the process, like is one and the same, like your process with that person, whether they're in your life or they're in your mind, and like, or what feelings you're having while you're thinking about that person, while you're engaging with that person, while you're in life with this person, or even if they've passed on and you're feeling like some people will say they're tormenting me from the afterlife. It's like, well, no, that's just you yourself needing to feel certain feelings in order to heal the feelings, in order to complete that process.
I was just going to say the same thing about they don't even need to be here on the earth plane.
Yeah. Like when it comes down to it, it's about you
Yeah.
and your self connection, hence the show, the name of the show. It
Right.
comes down to the self. So, yeah, and being brutally honest with yourself about your feelings, acknowledging your feelings, allowing the feelings to heal the feelings. And
Exactly.
sometimes that does require the assistance of other people to witness you and reflect back and all that good stuff. Um, but yeah, I think there's especially like you'll see people selling cord cutting. I'll cut this cord for you. It can never be done by somebody else. I mean, with the help of someone, but ultimately it's you.
We are in charge of ourselves. We do the cord cutting, we do the cord connecting. If you want to picture it as a cord, it's not really. It's
Yeah.
just that energetic part of self that we've come to heal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the next topic that would segue from this is going to take more time. So I think I'll end it there unless you have anything else. Do you have other questions on these topics, Ginny?
No, but let's see what they have to add.
Yeah.
It is important to understand that each one on the earth plane has come in order to allow themselves growth. And if they have chosen to experience growth in such a way as to allow themselves to be deterred or determined by another, it is impossible for one to move forward without some type of energetic disconnection. One may choose to call it a cord on the earth plane. However, in our estimation, it is the energetic connection between oneself and another. And when one is ready to move forward in such a way as to heal themselves in that area, they will release the energetic connection to it. In our estimation, 99% of the time, when one comes to the earth plane, there are many different kinds of relationships, many different kinds of learning experiences within those relationships. Therefore, each one could, if one chooses to see chords in such a way, have a cord attached. However, in our estimation, it is not a cord per se. It is a connection, and it is allowable to be disconnected energetically when no longer required. chords in one's mind self are quite different. One chooses to believe one is attached to another by a invisible cord or connection. In our estimation, it is only on the energetic level that it is created, only on the energetic level that it is healed, and only on the energetic that one can release it. When one on the earth plane experiences an experience as what you were referencing, one is allowing oneself the learning required in order to allow oneself to understand that there is more to oneself than one can know. Therefore, healing is taking place in many ways. We would highly recommend that each one take a look at one's own heart self, allow oneself to understand what each one needs for each one's own self, whether it be on the physical level or the spiritual level, is at this moment of no concern. What is of concern is for one to understand what one wants, what one needs, and how it is that one is able to attain those, it's like satisfaction, those things that are required for oneself to grow. Do not be concerned. In our estimation, it is right that one move forward in any area of being. However, 99% of the time, it is healed, released, and disconnected from the heart level. The heart self is that part of self that connects oneself on the earth plane with oneself in spirit. Do not be concerned, all is love. There you go.
Thanks, Ginny.
You're welcome.
Thanks, multitude.
It is our pleasure.
All right.
We would also like to add that as it is that each one allows each one's own self to be who they are, that they allow themselves to connect with each other as well. As there is that fear that connecting with another will diminish oneself. However, that is not the case. When one allows oneself to energetically connect with another and heal those things that are required to be healed, whether they are presented on the earth plane as a positive or a negative is unimportant. What is important is that person is allowing that self, their self to experience. Do not be concerned, all is love.
It's like they knew the next topic. And they're like, wait, we want to squeeze it in here.
Always no.
I feel like I should ask the one question I have about it though.
It's all energy. Go ahead.
Well, so yeah, it has to do with permission
Go ahead.
and like accessing another one's field, whether it is to offer healing, whether it is to gain insights, to be, in communication with another person, a lot of, you know, ethically speaking, do you ask permission on the physical? If you get a no, can you ask permission on the etheric level? That's where you're going to get a real answer. It's either going to be allowed or not allowed, right? Whether you have permission or not. Okay, so what can they say about whether it's offering healing, accessing another person's super self for information? What do they have to say about gaining permission and the ethics of doing that?
It is important to understand that if it is that one is interested or believes one needs permission, it is quite permissible to ask for it. It does not matter on what level, whether it be the physical or the spiritual level. However, if that permission is not granted, one will not be able to access any information, regardless of what the person says on the earth plane or what the person believes on the earth plane. Permission is granted on the spiritual level between the asker and the grantee. Do not be concerned.
But is it ethical to ask for permission and gain access on the spiritual when you have a no answer in the physical.
It is important to understand that there are those on the earth plane who believe that they are very much in control of who they are. And 99% of the time they are. However, there is that 1% of themselves that remains in spirit, that is looking for help, that is looking for care, that is looking to be understood. Therefore, we would highly recommend that if one is denied permission on this physical plane, and one believes that there is spiritual help available, then one connect on the spiritual plane and receive the permission or denial that is required. Do not be concerned.
Ooh, I know that can get into ego, like, is someone actually connecting or, yeah, that's,
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now, you and I can connect with that kind of energy, but there are those, and when you're talking about ego, who believe that they can connect on that energy, and they probably can on that level, rather, but their mind is of the earth plane connection. If they believe in the physical that they need permission, then they need permission. If it is that they believe that, okay, permission has been denied. However, I know on the spiritual level, my love and care can be beneficial. Then one can ask, and it may be denied there as well. However, it is the ego self that is the one in charge on the earth plane, and the spiritual self that is in charge on the spiritual plane. When one on the earth plane believes that permission is required, permission is required. If one on the earth plane says, oh, I can disregard what you say, and I'll go over your head, and that is ego. That is the type of disconnection that on the earth plane one is can be detrimental. In our estimation, when one is of a sincere heart, one will always have permission.
oh, that's the key then. So, and that's where I think people can feel, because I can get a sense of some people feeling unsafe, like, oh my gosh, well, if somebody can access my, even if I say no, and then they can access on the spiritual, like I'm not in control kind of thing. The key is, are they of a sincere heart?
Of the sincere heart, but the person on the earth plane is always in control in the spiritual. They will either grant or deny on the spiritual. Then, because you said out of control, well, they're not out of control. They're
Yeah,
in control on the spiritual level.
right, right. So yeah, even if you think someone is nefarious, if
Yeah,
they're not of sincere heart, you are innately protected. And
yeah,
if an experience comes of it that you deem detrimental, perhaps the permission was granted in order for you to have that experience to grow and learn from it.
yeah, that could be a.
I mean, in that way, I can feel this sense of like, well, I'm victim to my soul's choices then. Um,
But you know, you are your soul. You're one. They're not
yeah,
two separate things.
yeah,
Yeah. Which I hear from you a lot is that they're two separate things. And I know you don't believe that, but I know that lots of times the perception of what's going on Earth is that there's two different things, and they're not. They're one and the same.
yeah. I think that's probably where I still have some healing to do in that um, it's like I know them to be the same, but yes, I do often, like, even in my mind's eye, I view it separately, even though I know they're not separate.
Right.
And so I don't know, perhaps that's me still trying to heal from victimhood or something else, who knows what, a disjointed way of being. Uh, constantly putting my power outside of myself,
Yeah.
right? Like I've had a lifetime of that, of seeking validation outside of myself, people pleasing, like controlling the external world to feel safe. So I still maybe have some healing in that area to do, and that's why that is not fully integrated yet.
But I'm guessing that's one of the reasons you came to the earth plane,
Yeah, it feels like it.
to heal that.
Yeah, it's like I think of how that pattern shows up in so many ways in my life. Like I was born a twin, so you're instantly born in relationship to another. And then like yeah, the ego kind of, for me, like my experience throughout my life is well, what does another think? And then how does that inform my identity? And yeah, instead of just having my identity,
Right. Yeah.
having my own beliefs, it's like, well, first let me figure out what everyone else's are and then decide instead of just deciding. Yeah, I think that's been part of my journey.
Yeah.
Probably will continue to, but yeah, feels like a soul path. It's not comfortable all the time. Here I am. Look, here I am doing a YouTube with another person.
That's
Ginny,
how
tell me what you think. Multitude, what are the answers?
that's how we learn on the earth plane, right? It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right, well, that was a good session. Thanks, Ginny.
You're welcome.
Thanks to
Thank you,
Multitude.
multitude. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate that.
Yeah, if you guys want to submit your questions, go to my website, themindfulherbalist.com, click on the self-connection. There's a form at the bottom. Please keep them as brief and concise as possible, and we'll ask them in a future episode.
Okay. All right.
See you guys next time on the Self Connection.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.